Welcome to the Health Design Leadership Podcast with author, speaker, and leadership coach Carol Phillips. We're here to help you sharpen your leadership skills and discover the best ways to build great teams. Business leaders are continuously looking for ways to improve productivity, reduce turnover, and increase profits. How do you do this? By improving company culture. Smart leaders know how to create a winning work environment by prioritizing the wellness of employees while modeling positive leadership skills that build effective teams. Our goal is to share our experiences and ideas to take you and your team from good to great. So sit back and enjoy this episode of the Health Design Leadership Podcast with your host, Coach Carol.
Hello, leaders. I'm Carol Phillips. Welcome to our first episode of the Health Design Leadership Podcast. I'm very excited and honored to be hosting a program designed to help business leaders create workplaces where employees thrive and great teams succeed. I hope you identify several takeaways from each of our podcasts, but I encourage you to find at least one each time that really speaks to you and your work situation. Then decide the best way to implement it into your leadership skills right away to put that knowledge into action. Now, let's meet our first guest. Tom Raffio is the president and CEO of Northeast Delta Dental. Under Tom's leadership for the past 28 years, revenue has grown from $57 million to more than $452 million in 2022. Tom's commitment to the principles of continuous quality improvement led to the creation of its Guarantee of Service Excellence, GOS program, backing up 7 facets of service with customer refunds, the first such comprehensive program in Northern New England. The company has evolved into an industry leader recognized for its outstanding business practices. Tom is an amazing leader, and I'm excited to hear all the valuable leadership information he's going to share with all of you. Tom Raffio, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Carol. It's always great to connect with you. You are amazing, and the topics that we'll be covering today, I think, will really be enlightening to your audience.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for being our first guest as we kick off our new podcast. I know our listeners are going to gain valuable information that they can use in their own workplaces.
I'm sure you'll have many guests that follow me that will even be more insightful for me. But I am honored that I'm your initial guest for sure.
Yes, it's very exciting. Let's talk about corporate wellness and culture. You know, I'm all about helping business leaders embrace the values and behaviors that resonate with their employees. Please share with us some of the ways Northeast Delta Dental creates a great culture for your entire team.
Well, one of the things I've learned, particularly in this day and age where there's staffing shortages you read about just about in every industry, is that people want to work for a company where they have a purpose. So we pay our salaries probably at the 50th percentile level, yet we have very few openings. And one of the things I've learned over the years is, well, certainly people want to be paid fairly. The new modality is that they want to have a job where they feel they're shaping the direction of the company, that they have access to leadership, and that there is a purpose to what they're doing. So if you look at the core values at Northeast Delta Dental, one is communication. All 225 of us get together frequently, and they all have access to me. The second core value is teamwork. Everything we do is in teams, cross-functional teams. Third is taking pride in quality. When you call our 800 number, you get a human being within 15 seconds that's an expert. So we still do the human touch and still give quality responses to our customers and to our dentists and try to pay claims 100% accurately. And finally, integrity. We're known for the integrity and being in the community and giving back. And so we literally have very few openings in the company, even in this day and age of low unemployment and people having a lot of openings. And again, I've learned it's really the culture that creates people wanting to work for you. And we have had many examples where people apply for positions that don't even exist, but they just kind of want to get their name out there. So that's kind of what I find exciting in a way, because you don't have to run a country club and pay exorbitant salaries, but what you do have to do is provide purpose for your employee colleagues.
Absolutely. It's about listening to what people want and what they need. And I love that you mentioned that people are applying for positions that don't even exist, because that speaks to your great reputation in the community.
Well, thank you. And I know our HR VP, Ryan King, who succeeded Connie Roy Jakowski, who I know I mean, he basically says it's amazing. People are constantly, calling us and just saying, do you have any openings? And it's a real, and it's not me. It is just kind of the overall culture of the company. As people have once said, when they walk into the reception area, it feels like a fresh green forest. They can sense the authenticity of the company. And also the other fortuitous thing that's happened is that people now understand the importance of oral health. So maybe 20 years ago, people looked at oral health as a luxury, as opposed to you can't have good overall health without good oral health. And so people want to get involved with spreading good overall health. And so that gets to the purpose, part of our company, which is, there's nothing wrong with making widgets, but I think when people see that this is part of population health, they feel like that they're doing good for society by being a Delta Dental colleague.
Exactly. What's more important than people's health? That's terrific. I love that. On another topic, when I work with business leaders, they sometimes struggle with the whole health concept, meaning realizing that employees come into work with all of life's personal challenges and trying to maintain a healthy work-life balance. And with that, it's wonderful employees have become more understanding that if they're more flexible with employees regarding work hours, time off, et cetera, they'll see a return on investment by way of increased productivity, reduced turnover, et cetera. So can you please dive into that topic for us?
Sure. Well put. First of all, we take great pride in emphasizing the wellness component. We have a wellness center, a fitness center. We have run group, walk groups, fresh fruit. We have EAP for for mental health. A number of things that we do to make sure to help keep our employees in a holistic way healthy, and we try to have that work-family balance. So we, in a way, have allowed the ultimate flexibility. Half of our employees are still working virtually and happily doing so. The other half are in various sort of hybrid modes where they come on campus as needed or as they want to. And what we try to do is give people that flexibility. And during the height of COVID, when more people were working virtually, there's only a handful of us coming in, I made it clear to people that I get it. If you're working from home, you're going to be interrupted by a child, a grandchild, a pet, a spouse, and that's okay. You have that flexibility. And I would actually give examples of myself. I would do daily emails, and I would show pictures of me, trying to type an email with my granddaughter, crawling all over me. So I think employees like the fact that we have the flexibility. We don't overly brag about flexibility. Our employees know they have it. And I'm the first one to understand that there will be times where they're going to be, not being able to be fully focused in the morning as maybe their kids are going off to school, but they're going to give us even more later. And then very exciting things happen as a result of giving people flexibility. We had a customer, a local customer in New Hampshire that had branch offices in California. And so they wanted customer service through 8 o'clock at night. And so normally our phone service ended at 5 o'clock, and it was very easy to get a few customer service reps to extend hours till 8 because they were working from home with the new phone system we have. So they started later in the morning, and then they worked till 8. But they're doing it from home. Was easy to implement. They were happy to do it. So it kind of, again, gave us, you kind of have the best of both worlds. Employees get flexibility, but that flexibility comes back to Northeast Delta Dental, and it allowed us to extend customer service hours by 3 hours, which ultimately helps business without, we could do it really quickly without a lot of fanfare.
Terrific. Yeah, it's all about creating those win-win-win situations and then seeing the return on the investment. That business leaders are still learning about how the soft skills can, really benefit their bottom line. And the fact that happy employees are your best advertisers, because people are always talking about work, whether they're happy there or not happy there. And that, resonates in the community.
Precisely. Doing well by doing good. Employee colleagues become your best ambassadors. You're absolutely right. That's what most people talk about when you're out on the social circuit, what their job is, and they love their job, and they talk about it. And it just it's a great, beautiful circle. As employees do well, the company does well, then that creates new promotional opportunities for employees. They continue to grow professionally, company continues to grow, and it creates an awesome, cycle of growth for the company and professional growth for the individual colleague.
Right. It definitely comes full circle. And when business leaders can see that circle, that can make all the difference. Years ago, it seems like it was almost taboo to create a comfortable work culture. And by comfortable, I mean creating a culture that was mentally, physically, emotionally comfortable for everyone, and with an embracing and caring environment. Please share with us how you and Northeast Delta Dental create a sense of belonging for your colleagues.
Well, we strive to be a family, even though we're a large corporation. So my sort of role and challenge is to keep the family keep the family environment, as we are, candidly, $500 million company, and we have different offices, and now across the country, actually, with some of our employees working in states outside of Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. So that sense of belonging is created by activities we do as a group. We still do all the old-fashioned company picnics. We still encourage all of our employees to get involved with the community. We have these grants called the Employee Community Involvement Grant and Volunteer Involvement Pays program, where employees can go out and get involved with the nonprofit organization of their choice, get involved with the community, and then they come back and they tell us in our team newsletter, what they accomplish, and they have a real sense of pride that the work that they do at Northeast Delta Dental and the work that they apply to other nonprofits, it makes a difference to the quality of life of everybody, that lives in New Hampshire. And I think all of us feel at Northeast Delta Dental that, we have an obligation to continue to make New Hampshire great. The New Hampshire that all of us grew up in and love, we want to continue for future generations. And so that, sense of belonging, where Delta Dental is considered a linchpin for the community. We have a soccer field for the community that we put in, all the nonprofits that we populate, that we want to be a fixture, in the community, and our employees take great pride in that, and they feel like that that's one of our roles beyond, processing dental claims. One of our roles is to make sure that we help New Hampshire continue to be great, and it really kind of, binds us all together, and we have a lot of fun doing it. I mean, I will admit I'm probably on too many nonprofit boards, but many others probably, we populate 60 other nonprofit boards. So everybody in management and many others, are on one or two other boards, and it's a really nice sense of sort of the overall collective of New Hampshire, that we're keeping it great.
Yeah, isn't that a winning philosophy, blurring the lines between work and home and community, but having fun at the same time?
Exactly. And I've always say it's not a job when you have fun doing it and when you feel like you have a purpose. We've had several employees who have retired from other organizations, and they come in, they say, "Oh my God, this is like I'm unleashed." And that's another great thing about getting back to the belonging thing. We have a bunch of young new employees that have come in, as well as more seasoned employees that have come in, and collectively we're all on the same page, and everybody wants to have the same level of passion, and they do, and the same sense of respect. So sometimes when you read about, oh, the younger generation doesn't want to work as hard, well, that's simply not true. And then if you hear, well, if the older employees don't want to be creative, well, that's not true either. And we break all that down, and it's great. And then one of our secret sauces is we have a lot of employees with 20, 30, 40 years experience, 15 years experience, that know their business, they know what they're doing, and so they can provide great service, coupled with newer employees that have brought us all sorts of new technology and creativity that have really catapulted us to the next generation of dental insurance.
That's great. Getting rid of those stereotypes. And I know one popular topic is generational diversity in the workplace, and, teaching each other, the benefits that each group brings.
Exactly. And the reality is, we need everybody in the workforce. And we've got to break down these stereotypes. I mean, there are young people here in our technology department who work extraordinary hours as we fight off cyber criminals. And then there are older, more seasoned employees that are as creative as any younger employee. So I think as we break these stereotypes down, and everybody works together, it becomes really fun, to see it all come together.
Yes, there needs to be more fun in the workplace for sure. Tom, I'm a huge believer in the leadership team, employees, and the community creating great relationships, having fun, working well together. And I'm sure over the years you've dealt with situations that have created great, funny, and inspiring stories to share. Do you have one that you can share with our listeners today?
Sure. Well, let's in a way it's funny, but it's serious in other ways. So we actually had, long before COVID-19, we actually had a pandemic committee, and we spent a lot of time on enterprise risk management for a number of reasons. We are on a floodplain here in Concord, number one. Number two, there's a railroad that's pretty close to our building that has hazardous waste on it that could explode out there. So long before it was popular, we had done all of this enterprise risk management planning, including the possibility of a pandemic. Now, I'm not here to say that we predicted COVID-19, but we did have a pandemic committee. So we had built up our reserves. We had bought a new phone system so customer service people could take the calls in a distributed way from home. So when COVID-19 hit, and on March 16th, when basically our world changed and the American Dental Association said you can't go to the dentist, March 16th of 2020, that is, and then of course all the federal guidelines, it was very easy for us to pivot and get people safely working from home. And we were able to give premium relief to our customers, and we were able to give grants to dentists to keep them in busy. But one of the things we did was planning for the pandemic. we had bought a plethora of surgical masks, the masks that until recently you saw people, wearing around. And so we had a whole building full of masks. So we had that ready to go. But I'm on the Dartmouth Health Board, and there was a call for when COVID hit, and the hospitals, were short of PPE, personal protection equipment. We got a call for, if anybody has, surgical masks, we need them. So we took all of our surgical masks that we had so methodically planned, and I describe this in my book, Prepare for Crisis, Plan to Thrive. So it's all in there. So we bought all these surgical masks, but when I got the call from Dartmouth Health, I said, okay, well, let's give them up to Dartmouth Health. And so we dropped off all of our surgical masks to Dartmouth Health, which they needed for bigger reasons than ourselves. And then, of course, 2 days later, it was a requirement that we needed masks, to walk around. So we had prepared properly, for the crisis, and we had all of these surgical masks, but then we gave them away to a higher calling, so to speak. So the whole point in all this is, as I describe in the book, Plan for Crisis, Prepare for Crisis, Plan to Thrive. You can do all this planning, but ultimately you do make decisions, and you do have to pivot. And sometimes even the best planning can not always result, in a perfect solution. But in a way, it was good, because honestly, I feel that if we help Dartmouth Health in the middle of a crisis, we could deal with not having, the surgical mask for ourselves.
Right. Isn't it amazing how sometimes the universe will come in and say to us, this isn't going to go the way you thought it was going to go, but your efforts were worthwhile, but it's just in a different way than you thought it was going to happen.
Perfectly said, because we loved that planning that we did. It was channeled to a higher cause, is how we looked at it. So well put, and we're glad we did. And then ultimately, through one of our customers and suppliers, a company called So Clean, we were able to buy thousands and thousands of additional masks, which we then took a little bit for our own employees, but then literally gave them to all of our dentists in New Hampshire, Maine, and Vermont, because people forget, but back in 2020, you couldn't get your hands on personal protection equipment. So I like the way you put that. We used our resources, for a higher calling.
And that really resonates with employees when they see you caring about their safety and their health. It speaks to them on that primal level, whether they think of it consciously or subconsciously, it's there. They have that comfort. So Tom,
agreed, and that really, when COVID hit and most everybody was working from home, just the daily emails that I did, and the human side of it, and making sure they were okay. And for a while, when when dentists weren't working, we obviously weren't processing any claims. So for a little while, a few employees, had to be furloughed, and just kind of staying in touch with them and making sure they understood that, you'll come back as soon as we start paying claims, and that sort of making sure they were okay. And then once I knew employees were okay, then we could take care of dentists by giving them grants, and then we gave premium relief to our customers. So we kind of kept the industry alive until people got their hands around COVID protocols.
That's terrific. That's terrific. You're also the author of multiple books. So first, congratulations. That's a lot of hard work, but rewarding work. Tell us about your books and the messages you want to share.
Well, first of all, thank you. And I know you're an author as well. So, book writing is kind of a love-hate relationship. We have a lot to say. We want to get it down on paper, and we do. It takes discipline, but that last 10% of the editing and fact checking can be a little stressful. So I've actually written 4 books. The first one was on leadership, called There Are No Do-Overs, and it was really written with a basketball star in my generation of the 70s, Dave Cowens, who I met at a business conference, and it turns out he was the salt of the universe. And we applied leadership that he learned on the basketball court as a player and coach to business, and it's filled with sort of leadership principles. It ended up being great that David was the co-author, because people actually bought the book, because a lot of people know who Dave Cowens is. And there's many chapters on different traits that work. And my favorite chapter is chapter 8 on communication, because as I talked about when we talked about core values, communicate is one of the keys, obviously, to being a successful leader. And then the other concept of servant leadership is a thread throughout the book. The second book was on mindfulness. Before COVID, people were already starting to get a little stressed out, and I kind of noticed that. And so we applied some mindfulness to our sort of practices at Northeast Delta Dental, and it's co-written with Professor Annabelle Burrell. And mindfulness can be a simple concept of, think about your day for 5 minutes before you go into the office and before you go home. Think about, before you step in back to the home. It doesn't have to be, doing yoga chants and things like that. And so we have a group of employees that have gotten into mindfulness, and it was particularly important, during COVID, when people were a little stressed. So that book is on mindfulness with Professor Burrell. The third book is the one I've mentioned a couple of times, Prepare for Crisis, Plan to Thrive. We were so successful during COVID. I know a lot of companies also successfully pivoted, so it wasn't just Northeast Delta Dental, but we did things a little more quickly and nimbly, including giving back $27 million to the community. So people wanted to know how we did that. So Prepare for Crisis, Plan to Thrive kind of talks about the processes that we went through, including what I mentioned, that we had planned for a pandemic, and how we successfully made it through, and then, if anything, became more successful, during COVID. And then finally, the most fun book I've written is called Stories from the Starting Line. As you know from our prior interactions, big into fitness and to the running community. So over the years, I've met some terrific people, famous people like Joan Benoit Samuelson, but also local icons. And when COVID was starting to wind down a little bit, and Prepare for Crisis was published, and I didn't have to do any more editing, my wife and I were driving home from a race, and she said, wouldn't it be great to kind of interview runners that we've met over the years? And then simultaneously, I got an email from a local runner, Mike Gula, who said, "Hey, I just read your crisis book. Why don't you do a fun book on running?" So it kind of came together that way. And then one of my other friends, Mike Morin, wrote a book on candlepin bowling, different people that had gotten active during the 60s and 70s in candlepin bowling, and he interviewed many people. So basically, the running book is the Mike's equivalent of candlepin bowling. So we ended up interviewing 61 runners. Again, some people that you've heard of, Joan Benoit Samuelson, other local legends, and they all told stories from the heart. Not just stories that you've heard of, but for example, Joan Benoit Samuelson, she only got into running because she was a great skier, but broke her leg, and then she learned to rehab. She had to run, and then she learned she had a gift. Jackie Gareau won the Boston Marathon in the early 80s. She won the year that Rosie Ruiz cheated, and so no one knew she was a winner until like a week or two later. Well, she tells that story. And then we have a lot of other runners who tell their stories, how they've used running to overcome cancer or to deal with weight issues and other psychological issues. And so every runner that we interviewed totally opened up. So we're getting a lot of great feedback on the book. And again, it's called The Stories from the Starting Line, because every one of us that do any sort of walking or running or hiking can relate, to the stories in the book. So, and like all the books, all the money goes to charity for oral health. In the case of the running book, my corporate fitness trainer, a gentleman named Tom Walton, who was a great runner, died unexpectedly. So we've created a scholarship fund at NHTI, the community college next door here at Delta, and funds from Stories from the Starting Line also go to his scholarship fund. So that was a real fun book. But to be candid, Carol, even that fun book, that last 5% of editing and and fact checking still was a little stressful, but it was a fun book to write.
It's very grueling. The whole I know when I finished writing my first book and sent it to the editor, she emailed me back. She said, I just want to give you a heads up that you are only 70% done this book. You are not 100% done this book.
And you have to have thick skin and be willing to listen to feedback. What we think might be funny may not be as funny, and also to get it into 150 pages.
Oh, right.
So as Mark Twain once said, I'm paraphrasing, but it actually takes longer to write shorter, if you know what I mean. So
exactly. And it's funny. I had finished my first book. I was eager to write my second book, and I had been getting copies through a local printer for when I was doing keynotes. And I kept talking about, want to get that second book done. And then I started procrastinating really badly on it. And so one day the VP at the printing company said to me, half joking, he said, Carol, you're not a real author until you finish your second book.
I never heard that. Well, congrats, because I know you did.
Yeah,
it was fun. And as we talked about, when you start doing it, you get so much to say, and you do have to be disciplined, because particularly like my crisis book, I was doing it while leading the company through the crisis. So like every night at 10 o'clock, I would make sure I would put in 1 or 2 hours before I went to bed. And you have to be that methodical. And then you have to have what I call candid friends that will read it for you and not tell you that it's great if it's not.
Right. You have to be open to honest feedback. And, when I was much younger, I struggled with that. I had such a hard time with feedback. And then you just, you mature and you grow and you go through experiences, and you kind of learn that you need to learn to accept what other people are saying if you want to move ahead. But, it's not always easy. But now I'm like, bring it on,
Exactly. That's part of leadership, taking that in. And I have an expression here I call feedback is a gift. When we do either formal or informal surveys for our employees or customers or dentists, I say feedback is a gift. And of course, then you have to demonstrate that you've listened, and you have to provide the feedback loops so they know that you did listen. And sometimes you take the feedback and you maybe can't incorporate a suggestion, but you explain why you can't. And that's all that people want. And so I always encourage, I say feedback is a gift, and it's an investment to continuous improvement. And all of us, can improve. And in that first book that I referenced with Dave Cowens, I was able to interview a lot of superstar athletes and others, business people, and they all had one thing in common, which was the hard work and being receptive, to continuous improvement feedback.
Right. I love that. Feedback is a gift. I was just talking to a business leader the other day who struggles with that. And I shared that what I learned to do is to start off by saying, I want your feedback, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and feel free to be honest with me, because then you feel more in control instead of never asking for feedback. And then somebody feels the need to give you unsolicited feedback. And then you feel kind of powerless to, in your response. So, if you kind of take that first step, and then I always thank people for being honest, no matter how critical the feedback might be, because I know it's going to help me grow.
That's a great technique. Thanking, being grateful for the feedback, and encouraging it, early on, and then being receptive to it with positive body language, if it's in person, and but it was one of the critical success factors for all the successful leaders, that I talked with for my first book.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you documented so much regarding what you did to prepare for a pandemic and what happened during the pandemic and how you handled it, because that's going to help countless people and companies moving forward, because you documented this wonderful template. So please tell our listeners how they can learn more about you, Northeast Delta Dental, and how they can purchase your books.
Sure. So that last point on the Prepare for Crisis book is so true, because as we were finishing up and as listening audience remembers, I mean, rules kept changing on vaccinations and masks. So at some point it was going to be the never ending book. So towards the end of trying to close down that book, I said, I really want this more to be a manual for the next crisis. And how to prepare for the next crisis. And it'll probably be, internet related. It may not be another biological crisis. So the Prepare for Crisis, Plan to Thrive book, which you can get on Amazon as well as at Gibson's in the Bookery, is really more a manual for the potential of the next crisis, as well as describing how we succeeded during COVID-19. But it's more of a futuristic book for the next invariable crisis. So you can get that on Amazon. The new No Do-Overs book with Dave Cowens, you can also get on Amazon, and that's a book on leadership. And if it's kind of exciting in a way too, because if you're into basketball, there's a basketball kind of fun component to it. The third book, the mindfulness book with Annabelle Burrell, also available on Amazon. And if you're stressed out, or if you want to know more about mindfulness, you definitely want to get that book. And then finally, whether you're a runner or not, Stories from the Starting Line will give you some inspirational stories from people that you might know, because probably 58 out of the 61 people that are in the book are New Hampshire residents who you might have run into in other circles, whether you're a runner or not. And in fact, one of the testimonials on Amazon was actually from a non-runner who said the book provided all sorts of inspirational insights, even as a non-runner. So all those books are available on Amazon, as well as 2 local bookstores, Gibson's in Concord and the Bookery in Manchester.
Terrific.
And people can reach me at anydelta.com. I have a blog. There's a lot of materials on population health on our website. If you want to know more about health, rural wellness, just go on anydelta.com. We have a really user-friendly, accessible website. Whether you're a customer or not, I think you can learn a lot about the importance of oral health just by going on our website, anydelta.com.
Great. Thank you for sharing that information. I read your book, Prepare for Crisis, Plan to Thrive, the inside story of how one company did it right. And I wanted to include that tagline because it's so important. I wanted to share something you wrote in this incredible book that touched me and actually made me choke up. You write about the pandemic, and you shared a letter you wrote to your employees when everyone was first dealing with not being able to go to work. And this was right after Northeast Delta Dental needed to furlough a small percentage of employees. And you let everyone know how difficult it was for you and the company. You showed empathy, so important and appreciated by employees. And then you went on to say this to everyone. And this is on page 104. Quote, "We will get through this together. Together we can. TWC. Please use this time to deepen connections with your family and other loved ones. Stay physically healthy. And as mentioned in the previous communication, do something you have dreamed of doing for a while, but never had time. Take great care. I will be back in touch," unquote. How wonderful is that? That's how you put your people first and let them know you truly care about them, which means so much more to employees than some leaders may realize.
Well, thank you. And that TWC line, Together We Can, became our tagline. And in talking to the temporarily furloughed employees, all of whom came back, they said it was so refreshing that I was candid, and I said, once we start paying claims again, you'll be back, and that there was light at the end of the tunnel, and then use this opportunity. And so the TWC line became, our mantra. And as Carol mentioned, as you mentioned, in the book, in the appendix of the book, I actually have many of the original communications, which now I continue to do frequent communications. I'm now well over 500 of those. We number them, and
Wow.
those are the actual communications, and it really did bond the employee colleagues together, and all of us are still together. And now we're integrating newer employees that as we continue to grow, that have been hired since the pandemic. But that bonding, we really did bond during the pandemic, and it's great that we're back and we do company picnics and so forth. But I think it was important as a servant leader to express the reality that there was furloughs, but that we would be back together again, and we are.
That's terrific. That's the pandemic created so many horrible situations, but there were some good things. There's good things that come out of every crisis or change. And it's all about us utilizing those effectively.
Well said. And, the pandemic probably expedited some trends that were going to happen anyway, whether it's how you buy a car or online learning and more effective ways. And we just have to still find, that balance of human connection, and still remember that, keeping your personal health together, through physical and mental wellness is important, because if you're not well yourself, you're not going to be able to give back to the community. So we'll just need to continue to, make sure we have that balance, but yet take advantage of some of the learnings, that did occur, during COVID.
Absolutely. Okay, Tom, it's time for Coach Carol's quick quiz.
Uh-oh, pop quiz. I had an 8th grade teacher that gave me pop quiz. You're bringing shivers back to my neck, but I'm ready.
Hopefully this won't be painful. So
Okay.
I'm going to throw some questions at you just for fun and to learn more about you. So there's 5 questions. So give me the first thing that comes to mind. Are you
Sure.
ready?
I'm ready.
Question 1, share something Northeast Delta Dental does on an employee's first day of work that helps them feel welcomed.
They get an immediate tour. They get all 4 of my books. They meet everybody. We chat with them. They feel right at home. And invariably, employees tell me that first day impression, like fresh green forest approach, really solidifies them. And then, of course, after that, we do the sort of normal onboarding that you expect, including something I call coffee with the coach, where I get together with new employees. But just making sure they meet everybody on their first day, I think, is super, super critical.
And they personally get together with you on the first day. That's amazing.
I see them, and I'm here all the time, so I see them and shake their hand and talk about their family. And of course, I've done my homework, so I know where they've come from. And of course, they're on our intranet, and they're introduced on our Teams.Our newsletter, and then we have a monthly all employees meeting where we reintroduce them. And so they're right away they feel like they're part of the team.
That's terrific. All right. Question 2. What would you do on a totally unexpected day off?
Well, that's interesting, because I hadn't had a day off in a while, and last week I did actually. So my wife Ellen and our granddaughter Havana that lives with us, we just literally drove up to Mount Washington, and we just kind of hung out and communed with nature. And for the first time in a long time, I totally disconnected from my iPhone, and it felt great.
That's awesome. I mean, isn't it so good for the brain sometimes just to get away? Your brain knows. It's just like, get out of town for a while.
Exactly. And then And it was one of those nights when we got to the hotel, and we stayed over too, and it was that night that there were thunderstorms, and we just kind of huddled up and watched the thunder and lightning and the rain, and it was just kind of like old school. It was great.
That's awesome.
Refresh,
Yeah,
refreshing.
I find storms and rain very peaceful.
Yeah.
As long as nobody gets hurt, I really love them.
Exactly.
Okay. Question 3. You're having an ice cream social at work. What flavor are you choosing?
I've always been a vanilla person, and love vanilla. We actually do ice cream socials at Delta Dental, and when I think sometimes I think of I love vanilla, and I think of that Three Stooges episode where Mo wants Curly to like chocolate, but Curly keeps saying, no, I like vanilla. So I'm still, when all is said and done, I'm still a plain vanilla person.
Mo, Larry, Curly.
You got it. And I'm starting to look like Larry. So there you go.
Oh my goodness. All right. Question 4. You just found out you can beam yourself to another country for the next 24 hours and then beam yourself back. Where are you going?
I think I want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. So I would say Tanzania.
Wow.
And I say that because I've really slowed down as a runner, but I can still persevere one step after the other. And some of my family members, not me, but some of my family members have climbed Kilimanjaro, and they say it's challenging, but it's not dangerous. It's not like, say, climbing Mount Everest. So it takes like 6 or 7 days. So I would like to go to Tanzania, and with a small group, climb Mount Kilimanjaro, to kind of experience that, and then beam back to Concord, New Hampshire would be great.
That's awesome. All right. Question 5. If you could give one piece of advice to an employee who has just been promoted to a supervisory position, what would you tell them?
Listen, listen, listen. And this is something I actually say to a lot of new managers. You never have it nailed down, as far as being a people manager. I said, just when you think you've kind of figured it all out in terms of how to interact and what motivates human beings, something will surprise me. So never think that you have figured it out as far as being a people manager, that every day there's a learning experience in terms of how to motivate and lead people. And then if you permit me, a part B answer is that remember too that when people come to the office, if they're coming to the office, they're bringing with them what is just happened at home. So a normally jovial person that you say hi to, with a big smile, if they don't do their normal smile back, it may have nothing to do with you. It may be that they just had a bad interaction, with their spouse, whatever. So keep that in mind, that people are bringing into the office, their experiences. Which, if you permit me, Carol, if I could just add one thing about interactions. If the very last anecdote in the Stories from the Starting Line book is from Joe Gray, a world champion, and basically had a near-death experience. He went on a training run and was about to fall to his death, and he luckily got saved by a tree limb. But when his wife had dropped him off and they got into a huge fight, and he went on to do his training, and he told me as we were interviewing, and it brought shivers behind my spine. He goes, like, in that 5 seconds as I was sliding down into the ravine and I thought I was going to be dead, he kept saying, I couldn't believe it. The last interaction is having a fight with the person that I love most. And it really transformed his life to, like, you always want to be positive because, like, you just never know with life. So I mentioned that because it's kind of a way of transformationally thinking about, how we live our life and want to be positive. And then as a manager, when someone comes into your office, they're bringing in all of these, life's experience. So even if you're doing all the quote unquote right things, sometimes as a manager, it may become messy, not because something you did, but because of the other life experience that your fellow colleague is bringing in.
Right, exactly. And, I tell business leaders, get to know your people, as much as possible, and let them create great relationships with each other, because when that day happens where they come in and they're not themselves, you're going to notice it. Whereas otherwise you might not. And that gives you a great opportunity, to let them know that you care and see if there's anything that you can do for them. And, it's funny. I had a feeling you wouldn't be able to keep question 5 to one thing, because great leaders can't, because there's so many components to being a great leader and being there for people.
And that point that you just made about if you know your employees and something is off, then you can be so much more helpful. That's a terrific point, and reminds me of another funny story, if you could permit me.
Oh, absolutely.
A few years ago, I broke 3 ribs, which really painful. I fell down on my driveway, and yet that night I had a speech to do at the Granite State baseball dinner. So I talked my way out of the hospital. They said, as long as you come back the next day to make sure that the pneumothorax, which is basically the hole in the lung, that had healed. So they taped me up, and I went ahead with my speech, and only so in the audience, let's say there was 300 people, or maybe more actually. And so the 4 or 5 people that really knew me knew that I was slightly off. And that always, but no one else did. And it kind of resonates with what you said, which was they knew something was wrong because they knew me. And so what you said is so important, that as you get to know employee colleagues, I mean, you first of all, you build that trust, and that old Covey line of the speed of trust. You can do so much more if you trust colleagues. I always say, when someone calls me and says, Joe in customer service, said this to me, and I know that Joe never would have said that, but because I trust Joe, and it just makes the interactions go that much better. That if you know your employees, it makes the speed of business faster, you're more productive, and it allows you to know when to reach out.
Right. You see the red flags. Yeah. I was working with a company once they were making a huge change to the employees' work hours. So it was affecting every single employee. It was affecting their personal lives. And I was talking about, recognizing the red flags and pulling employees aside and saying, hey, are you okay? And interestingly, I had one of the supervisors raise their hand, and they said, how can I be expected to solve all my employees' problems? And I was glad they asked that, because it gave me an opportunity to explain that it's not all about solving all their problems. It's about just letting them know that you care and letting them know what you can do to help.
Exactly, that you're listening and that you know that there's an issue. Well said. Wow, I so enjoy talking to you, Carol, all the time. You're amazing.
You too. Right back at you. So, Tom, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners who are creating great places to work?
Just make a difference. Have a purpose. Have a welcoming culture. It's not about how much you pay people, although that's a base part of things, but it's how you treat people with respect, dignity, that they're part of the strategy, that they're part of the team, and that you care about them. And if you do that, they will follow you everywhere.
I love that. Thank you so much, Tom, for helping us kick off our first podcast. I always find you to be so inspiring, so positive, and you do so much good in the community. And thank you for being an amazing role model for other business leaders who are working hard to create a healthy and fun workplace culture.
And thank you, Carol. And I look forward listen to subsequent interviews so I can learn myself as well. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you so much, Tom. Listeners, be sure to check out Northeast Delta Dental's website at nedelta.com and check out all of Tom's books on Amazon. And a big thank you to all the business leaders listening today who are making their companies the best places to work. Be on the lookout for our next podcast and make today a great day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Health Design Leadership Podcast with Carol Phillips. Be sure to click on the subscribe button so you won't miss any new episodes. To listen to the entire conversation with our guest, join our online leadership dream team at askcoachcarol.com. If you're looking for an engaging speaker for your next event or an effective trainer to strengthen your leadership team, contact Coach Carol today. Thanks again for listening, and make it a great day.